Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into things because today we are exploring a truly special story. We're going to unpack a pretty wild adventure about a tiny yellow duck who ends up teaching us some absolutely massive lessons about connection, facing our fears, and finding friends in the most unexpected places. So if you love a good story that packs a meaningful punch, you are definitely in the right place. Let's get started. So are you afraid of the dark? Come on, be honest. It's a completely natural fear. You know how it is. The shadows get long, the trees start looking a little twisted, and literally every little sound makes you jump. Well, our story today actually begins on a super quiet evening in Duckville Forest, completely setting the stage for a rather spooky nighttime trip. And right at the center of it all is a tiny hero who decides he's going to face that darkness head on. Which brings us to Section 1, A Very Curious Duck. Allow me to introduce our hero, Little Duck. This little guy is curious about absolutely everything. Clouds, trees, and especially a rumor he overheard about a haunted spot called Moon Pond. Apparently, two older ducks were nervously whispering that a ghost appears there every single full moon, and they explicitly told him to stay away. But for Little Duck, yeah, that just sounded like an invitation. So he decides to investigate. And his packing list for the spooky adventure? It is hilarious. Think about it. If you're going to hunt a ghost, what do you bring? A flashlight? Makes total sense. 3 cookies and a sandwich? I mean, absolutely essential for energy. But a rubber duck? As the story points out, literally nobody knew why he packed a rubber duck. Actually, not even Little Duck knew. He just said, it feels important. I absolutely love this because it so brilliantly shows his innocence as he marches right into a dark forest where owls are hooting and strange shadows are dancing all around him. Okay, moving right along to Section 2, The Ghost of Moon Pond. So after reaching this foggy clearing, Little Duck finds the moon shining so brightly over the water. It's beautiful, sure, but also very creepy. Then suddenly, splash! A pale figure slowly rises straight out of the pond. Its eyes are glowing, its body is shimmering like moonlight, and then the two of them just kind of stare at each other. The ghost stares, the duck stares. And finally, Little Duck nervously asks if the ghost is gonna, haunt him with scary stuff. So the ghost makes a spooky face, and instead of screaming, Little Duck just laughs. The ghost totally sighs in defeat. He complains, nobody ever gets scared correctly. Turns out he's been haunting this pond for 200 years. He used to be famous, but now nobody is scared. And who does he blame for this? The internet. Which is pretty funny considering neither of them actually knows what the internet even is. Up next is Section 3, The Sad Shadow Beast. Right as they are bonding over this, a terrifying howl echoes through the forest. The ground actually starts to tremble. Dark shapes start moving through the fog. Thump, thump, thump. The ghost totally panics and warns Little Duck that it's the Shadow Beast, basically the biggest, most terrifying monster in the entire forest. And what does the 200-year-old ghost of Moon Pond do? He immediately hides behind tiny Little Duck. Little Duck is completely surprised and asks, wait, aren't ghosts supposed to be brave? The ghost insists that he is brave. So Little Duck asks, then why are you shaking? And the ghost replies, I'm bravely shaking. It is just a perfect, hilarious reversal of expectations. Then the trees part and this gigantic black creature with glowing red eyes and enormous claws emerges. Its roar literally shakes the pond. Everyone screams. Little Duck wants to run away, very badly. But here we hit a really powerful learning moment. Courage is investigating before running away, even when you are scared. Little Duck remembers that true heroes don't just run, they stay to learn the truth. So even though he's terrified, he stays. And because Little Duck showed that incredible courage, we get this amazing twist. Instead of dealing with a terrifying, roaring monster, Little Duck finds something completely different. When he finally asks the monster why it's screaming, the monster just stops and admits it's only screaming because they screamed. Then the giant shadow beast sits right down and starts crying huge monster tears simply because he lost his favorite teddy bear. The scariest monster in the forest was literally just throwing a tantrum over a lost toy. So the duck, the ghost, and the giant monster decide to team up and search for the bear together. It's quite the timeline. For the first 2 hours, they check all the caves and bushes. But by hour 3, they somehow find themselves at a bakery. The ghost actually stops and asks, why are we searching a bakery? And Little Duck just shrugs and goes, I was hungry. You gotta love it. After filling up on some cookies, they finally spot a trail of fluffy stuffing at hour 4, which leads them straight to an abandoned cabin. This brings us to Section 4, The Lonely Raccoon. So this stuffing trail leads them to a crooked cabin deep in the twisted trees. The windows are faintly glowing, the door is creaking in the wind. I mean, it's so spooky that even the ghost admits the place gives him chills. But Little Duck bravely marches inside, flips on his flashlight, and finds the culprit hiding right there in the dark. And guess what? It's not a monster, it's a tiny, terrified little raccoon holding the missing teddy bear. The raccoon admits to taking it, but tries to say, I borrowed the teddy forever. When the ghost points out that, well, that is just stealing, the raccoon lowers his head and admits the real reason. He just says, I was lonely. I don't have any friends. And this is exactly where our second major lesson appears in the story. Empathy. Empathy is basically understanding and sharing the feelings of someone else. The giant monster, who literally just a moment ago was roaring and crying over his stolen bear, softens immediately. He completely understands what it feels like to be sad, so instead of being angry, Little Duck, the ghost, and the shadow beast choose empathy. They tell the raccoon that he has friends now. The ghost even cracks a joke that anyone who survives a haunted cabin is automatically allowed to join their group. Finally, we reach Section 5, Courage, Empathy, and Friendship. The raccoon is so overjoyed that he returns the bear, and the giant monster is so happy he gives the bear a massive hug. But then he hugs the raccoon and accidentally traps everyone in a giant monster group hug. By the time they untangle themselves and make it back to Moon Pond, the sun is actually rising, painting the sky pink and gold. And then something totally magical happens. The ghost begins to glow brighter and brighter. He smiles really warmly and says, "I think helping others was the last thing I needed to do." He realizes his haunting days are finally over. By stepping out of that spooky persona and actually helping the giant monster and the lonely raccoon, he found peace. He thanks Little Duck for being the bravest duck, waves gently, and just floats upward into the morning sky, disappearing right into the sparkling moonlight. It's definitely a bittersweet moment, but such a beautiful one, because of Little Duck's courage to investigate rather than run, and his empathy to understand rather than judge. Literally, everything changed. From that day on, Moon Pond was no longer known as the Haunted Pond. It became known as Friendship Pond. The raccoon visited every week, the beast protected the forest, and Little Duck, well, he stayed exactly as curious as ever, immediately wandering off toward a mysterious glowing cave that literally had a danger sign on it. Of course he did. So it leaves us with a great question to think about. Where can you show empathy and be a brave friend today? Little Duck showed us that sometimes the things that seem incredibly scary are really just misunderstood, and the people, or, monsters, who act out might just be a little lonely. Next time you face a scary situation, just remember Little Duck. Investigate before you run away, and always, always lead with a kind heart. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you on the next adventure.